It's a hello from a Hollow Eve. I am gonna start doing a new series that I will probably maybe continue. And it's gonna be covering a wide range of topics. These are just my thoughts put to out loud, and also the really long essay, short essay that I wrote for it. Trigger warning, I will be talking about power scaling as my opening salvo, and I'm so sorry. I will not be coherent, possibly not even helpful. These things are never true. You don't know that, but you're gonna find out. So, in this video, I'm going to be talking about power scaling. And not in the way you think I am. No, not Goku versus Sailor Moon, or Scarlet Witch versus Sorcerer Supreme, or Batman versus anyone with enough time to plan. But it does cover the true power scaling that existed in more femme-coded media and fashion and history. And I'm going to call it the dress to impress. Or as pop culture has been recently referring to, aura farming, but only sartorially. So, I'm going to go through a couple examples. First, in power scaling in pop culture has been primarily used for the last decades to decide which characters in a crossover moment would be able to initiate a curb stomp and a heavy comment section debate. So I'm just covering that so everyone knows power scaling is feet versus feet, like they did this in one issue and they did this in another issue, who's the strongest. But I'm talking about fashion here, which is surprisingly actually more weighted in history and reality. But we're going to go through fiction first. So one group of power scaling gets missed in these conversations, and it's the femme-coded media. Yes, I'm talking about who's wearing it best. And you'll find those conversations happening in these comment sections everywhere, but we're just not calling it power scaling because there's so much technical work being added to it. It is who is indeed the best dressed, my favorite form of power scaling, the thing that draws me back again and again, and also got me into cosplay. The dress. The staircase moment, where the truly dedicated labor of either an artist, live action media dedication of months of technical labor. Staircase moment is just the most used and clears the example where you can be like, this is the stage. So instead of a battle arena that you normally would see where it's like, oh, here's the moment where completely flat land where people get to duke it out. Instead, for fashion, you get here comes the big ballroom staircase that they come down. It's so prevalent that I'm going to flash a bunch of images of how many times they reused the staircase moment, even though Cinderella, I think, is the one that really started that. It's because it gives you the highest point of view, and it gets you a good crowd view so you can see everyone stopping their conversation because that person looks so good that conversation literally pauses for a second. Now that I'm saying it's like a very obvious form of power scaling, but I don't think anyone's referred to as that, even though that is what it is. The unsung version that exists for femme media has perhaps taken a less recognizable form because of that, and also we don't refer to it as that. Cosplayers probably have definitely noticed, and costume fanatics, because dedication of so many images for front, left, side, the hemming, the pinning, the costume, how they made it, how they didn't make it. The pictures are endless for people trying to recreate some of these incredible looks that have been in live action and media for the last couple decades. Without particle effects or grand speeches of power or friendship before the final villain is defeated, we see this power scaling occur even when we see no other forms of combat. This is the combat that exists in this genre. I do think my favorite reigning example ever is the Ever After dress that even several decades later truly captured the heart of everyone who saw it. The labor of a couple months for a few short minutes of a film stopped that moment, and it caused everybody even in the scene, people were like, that outfit is so beautiful. The person wearing it must also be beautiful. An outfit so beautiful that even enemies will often mutter defeated line. Even the example I would give is the line from Not Another Cinderella Story movie, where the titular antagonist states, "Love the dress, hate her." Sartorial power scaling in romance, fantasy, isekai, TV, and theater. We do it for the girls. Joking. We do it to inspire the watchers and to crush our enemies. In one fashion show moment no one was willing to admit that they were in. The concept of power scaling for feats in pop culture has perhaps only in the last decade had a more defined vocabulary. definitely thinking that aura farming is perhaps my favorite word to be added to the cultural lexicon. And I will refer to every single time we have a moment like that in media from now on, or even that entire thing that Once Upon a Time did with all the costumes, as essentially just an aura farming for fashion. It's Cinderella having a dress so beautiful, it could only be made of magic and a wish. It led to even the isekai fantasy romance genre having its own dominant section, and gone from being just like a thing that Clamp does on occasion. And even the dating genre, they have the inclusion of the dress and a ballroom event that I don't think most schools would even normally have, except that they've added it just so you can have a moment where the dress is often a gift from your suitor or your father. And it's definitely just meant to highlight what level of power you have in a social situation and the potential suitor's wealth in a much more heavy-handed way. I mean, the fact that isekai romance is entirely based upon a character having a miserable life and upon death into a new world where they have immediately gotten a fancy new outfit or one is on the way, and it's like usually their little meet cute is to know that their suitor is on the right track with them, that they're reaching 100%, that they receive an outfit, or even convince your parents to love you. That's maybe the meanest one that isekai genre has added in for all those child themed manhwas and mangas. And of course I speak of isekai, but I'm gonna also talk about the other genre that does that shit the most, which is the magical girl genre. If you've never consumed it, you're living half a life. They're crazy. But I'm talking about like Sailor Moon, the anime, and then also the manga, obviously, being one of the first example where as you get more powerful, your outfit gets even fancier and starts to include AoE effects. And starts to include AoE particle effects, like, you know, you get bubbles, rainbows, and stuff like that to prove how beautiful and strong you've become. Even to her final form is either Neo Queen Serenity, or in a full ball gown with bow wings, or Sailor Cosmo with elements from the previous costumes. You can see the progression as she gets stronger, / every season she gets a new, fancier skirt until she finally has the full ball gown fit to her final form. You'll see that these costumes will change to, like, they'll get to goddess level or whatever, and it's not just that they're incredibly powerful now, but their outfit is even better. The stage setting is less important than the outfit change. Even talking about, like, the women descend from the staircase and the audience gasp in the first sight of the battle one, while it may not be the first grasp of Captain America's hand around a weapon only the worthy may wield, or solo levelers defeated monsters, or the one punch from a man who lost his taste for theatrics, isekai, romance, fantasy, and a lot of this have been dominating the femme-coded media scene for the last few years, and anime adaptations are starting to be added at a much faster pace than they previous were, proving the dominance of the genre. And I'm gonna bet some future problems when they try to animate some of these dresses. As each iteration, the stories are written out so much that the height of the climax of the story and the outlandishly complex and beautiful dress are the same scenes, and anyone who animates them will have to make them match or will be more impressive, or else they're going to receive the ire of a lot of people who were waiting for and imagining that moment. See, like, such as Who Made Me a Princess had a titular moment in the pink rose dress, which people are still on the fence of whether they like or hate that dress, because they were expecting a much more princessy dress that reached the floor. Or the jewel-encrusted gift from the prince in Villainouses Deserve to Die. Countless others, when they finally head to the big party moment, and you get to see them as, like, this is the height of beauty for them. The Met Gala moment, I might refer to it as. It's an interesting phenomenon that is so hilariously present in every form of these type of media. How you look really does make or break your worth. It's the cruelest form of social currency that exists past all cultural divides, and a weapon that cuts even while the one holding it. Like scissors, if you get that. I'm joking. So, now I'm going to talk about the Backlash when it's a pivotal scene in media, and then it produces a failure and ire response from fans. Several infamous in their circle in their projects have received such scathing indictments to their sartorial fashion choices in the last couple years. Anastasia on Broadway, the Disney live-action Beauty and the Beast dress. Let's see. I know we had some for Glinda, because she had everyone was looking for the blue bubble dress, and then we ended up receiving the pink bubble style dress that was vastly changed, but again, that's another part. So, those are just a couple of examples of the dress not living up to what people's expectations are, and when those expectations aren't met, you either have to have made something that was more original, or it has to be like more stunning for the moment, or receive a lot of backlash. And you'll see as we get further into, I think, the way social media is structured, that's going to become very divisive for a lot more people as a lot more people get more educated on these costumes and like what goes into them, and also the shortcuts that a lot of productions are making in order to get it. Because while paying a costumer might be cheap because they're very underpaid, the actual work is still several months to years, because you'll have to make multiple dresses for each shot. And this is where we're going to start seeing some divide. Some of this media is only based on how beautiful the outfits are, and if the outfits aren't living up to that, not going to be good. So, talking about the Anastasia on Broadway, did receive criticism a couple of years ago when they first came onto Broadway, and they did some tests on the audience, and a bunch of people were very upset because they had cut several of the dresses from the Anastasia movie, even though that was a big moment for a lot of people's childhood youth. So you could look into it, and there's a lot of people who were upset about because they didn't do the Once Upon a Dream dress in that scene. She was still dressed in her the ragamuffin look that she was wearing. And then they were also missing the popular blue dress, so much so that the costumer and the production ended up remaking so that the opera scene would have it, because that dress was so popular with so many people that they ended up, due to popular demand, had to make it. Disney itself has received a lot of criticism in their live-action remakes with the recreated dresses from animated productions. Cinderella, Maleficent, and Cruella received acclaim for costume design, scaling up to perception of each scene to match the climatic events of each of the stories. However, movies such as Beauty and the Beast received harsh criticism for the ballroom scene dress not being a matching spectacle to the animated film, or at least being a brand new design in a similar color scheme that is spectacular. Criticism for these changes have been attributed to fans for budget problems, design failures, and too fast on deadlines, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that continue. But it does mean that they are losing a lot of credit when the animators were able to animate such a beautiful costume, and I do think animating a dress probably takes a very similar amount of time back in those days to making a regular dress. So we're seeing a real budget down on some of these films. And then we also have the one that was good and actually received first criticism, then acclaim, and then criticism again, which was the Wicked movie. They had Glinda's bubble dress, which they thought was going to be the blue design to match the original haute couture dress, and instead they went with their own version based off of the pink dress from the movie. So they ended up doing a mix between the two of them, where they had the big flowing designs of the bubble dress, where it has the big shapes, but it also is the pink that's remembered from the original film. And you can see where I'm talking, where we're seeing this is power scaling. Like, how beautiful a dress is to its fans is like, I don't want to say democratic, because that's not really what it is, but it is receiving a lot of similar structured conversations and people comparing one to another, design, fit, cut, color. And that's the same as how when they do it in power scaling conversations that are like the standard, where it's like, oh, Wanda did this in her comic and she rewrote reality, and then Zatanna ripped the comic book in half, and that's her power feat. And then you see that ad infinitum as more comic books get read and more people find out about either old or new issues that are having different levels of scaling. My final section, from page to screen and the horror annals of history. My incredibly biased opinions will be stated here. This section is less fun because the real life examples are often horrors with a little bit of like rebellious joy, because I do appreciate that in the populace. So even the real world has used couture to get better service, gather funding, and I'm looking at no Nazi sympathizer and dresser for the Nazi party, Coco Chanel. Who hasn't put on their best outfits for the dentist, doctor, and job interviews? The social currency of being able to afford a decent outfit has long been a barrier people use in order to decide the level and type of service a person deserves. Dressing your best may actually save your life or wallet in cases where people will often choose to help on whether you look worth helping. Those people are bad. But they are prevalent, and we do live in a society where they highly encourage you to have those thoughts at every turn. If you feel yourself having those thoughts, you need to realize that that's a socialized thought and is not correct. And then you need to figure it out. You need to get a little better. It's why whenever people help the unhoused to get help is always a new outfit, a haircut, and that is enough to get them through the door to a job that's stated that they couldn't have unhoused applicants, but it would certainly have been a rejection due to the violent hostilities people have towards those who have been discarded by a system that uses the unhoused as a warning to the rest of the populace to stay in line. That is my scathing modern indictment / all of history indictment of the fact that you literally have to look like you can get a shower to be a person, which is, it's horrific. And now for the wealthier side, which will also be another scathing indictment, even if there's parts that I like. Now, on the opposite side of fashion, the creme de la creme, what becomes an increasing eyesore to the public as the wealth disparity grows ever higher, the Met Gala, or its previous name, Costume Institute Benefit. It's run since 1948 and it has been heralded as an epicenter for fashion and excellence in history, using the proceeds to advertise and fund the museum, which I think is correct. You do need to fund museums, and we don't, and that's why we lose a lot of history to wear age, and maintaining the history is important. From its humble starting price of $50 per ticket to now $75,000, I think $350,000 for a table. Like, several businesses have thrown their ticket price and then they hire people, like actors and stuff like that, to then wear rented costumes from brands, couture, and other things. And this is essentially just a very, very expensive advertising moment, and it's basically the fashion world Super Bowl. I mean, across the world, of course, there is their own fashion events. The Fashion Week in, I think, Italy and Milan has their spring, and then New York's Fashion Week is later portion of the year for the fall-winter one. It's like the best and brightest in haute couture. The Met Gala is unique in that it's incredibly televised to a lot more people because it's meant to reach everybody. It's the best and brightest in acting, fashion, culture, and those people often have seats bought for them in order to advertise for designers, house, brands, and companies. What are you wearing is the call that starts the races for weeks of discussion on who wore it best and the best dress for event. And it's fully just to advertise for whichever company. It's why they have to ask who wore it best and why people end up having to rent their costumes and their clothes and jewelry for the event. And then there's the unfortunate people who look like poor copies in similar outfits. A lot of other events that the best dressed is indeed power scaling, for which, and in this case, the winner is the brand that has the best couture fit and thus the attention for the events afterwards, which makes being able to afford such a glamorous outfit that only the wealthy can even rent, unless you're a business, is just like another example of like the artistic subset being used to help power scale for businesses. Again, I love the idea of the funding part, great. The fact that everybody has a bunch of artists that are all like underpaid in order to make these outfits for like haute couture rentals. And then some of the things that have been said at these events, and like I know they're trying to do tongue-in-cheek jokes, but they're not coming off well. You look back in history, and everyone used to make their own clothes and hand embroider to upscale even plainer outfits throughout history. And you know, with the loss of sewing and stuff like that, you see now everything is manufactured, and that plays into a lot of other things that I'm not going to get into. But I will, however, talk about dictators and fascism have been a big proponent in using this form of power scaling and fashion to control the populace. Whether it's Nazi sympathizer Coco Chanel, who designed the outfits so that they could put them fashion forward and thus more appealing in all the advertisements they were posting for them. Essentially being like, we are the best dressed, so we must also be good. Because there's a big thing with beauty being, despite everyone knowing that that's not a true thing, but if something looks good, a lot of people will be like, oh, it must be good just because it looks good. And then you had Mussolini's Italy had a fashion code that had strict Latin style that, despite the rising popularity of shorter skirts and brighter colors at the time, they were required to dress in similar styles and were to avoid appearing too girly and to appear more somber in appearance, like no makeup, darker colors, and everything. It was essentially to put more money into the Italian manufacturing, but at the same time, they were only manufacturing outfits that would be dour in appearance in order to make the entire populace look more same. It's a lot harder to go against the grain if everyone looks alike, because you can see people being weird a lot faster. North Korea has had a long policy to being anti-consumerist in fashion for the people, and by doing that, they went with designated hairstyles for all their citizens. For the US, England, and many other European locations and Western nations, there's a lot of obvious rules against dyed hair, piercings, tattoos, and now even banning references to current problems on people's persons. Starbucks is a known union-busting company that has fired people for suicide awareness pins, Black Lives Matter pins, Free Palestine pins in recent history, and they're also known to union bust. It's a very obvious turn in the direction of fascism for people to try to prevent anyone from looking out of place. Or color is rebellion, like full stop. You'll find that it always is. You know, it's the red flag in Les Mis. It's the there's even Schindler's List, that little girl with the red coat. It's people choosing to dye their hair blue even though you're not meant to. People getting tattoos. It's people choosing freedom of expression. And you hear bigots comment on blue-haired weirdos or septum theory, proving time is a circle. And counterculture fashion remains so powerful despite it being a relatively cheap service to change your appearance in that way. I mean, I'm not saying it's incredibly cheap, but you can get piercings and it doesn't cost you hundreds of dollars. You can get your hair dyed. And if you do it at home with at home, a cheap box dye, you can go from any color to any color in $20. Will it be perfect? No. But I don't know, perfect is the enemy of good or whatever. It's also been a known workplace hair racism that has gone on, which I feel terrible for all black people, despite it being protective styles to maintain their hair in order to force them to get a hairstyle more in common with how white or populous hair naturally looks. It's hair racism, like regular racism, is alive and well. If you haven't noticed this, it's because your eyes are closed. It's just the most visible form of racism you can find by looking around any retail or workplace to see it at play. Many areas in the US have also banned masks, which, not only being functional in the ongoing pandemic that continues to disable people, now becomes a functional symbol of the care for yourself and others. The banning of masks at protests, which have a high infection rate in large groups, seems particularly insidious in the area of AI facial recognition. For a final thing, I will say this. So, I hope my point was made. Fashion is power scaling.